Hey guys, so I just watched the movie Licorice Pizza, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and I just wanted to give my quick thoughts on this one because there's actually not that many reviews of it on the internet. It's a fairly recent movie, it came out on Christmas Day, but a lot of people don't go to the movies on Christmas Day, so it got put on hold. Plus, it got a little overshadowed by the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, so I decided to check this one out. I had to drive an hour to go see this movie because it was playing at the theater an hour away from my house. Not only that, but I was in Canada for the Christmas break and the theater shut down in Canada, so I had to wait till I was back in the US to go check this one out. That's why I'm so late to this review. The story of Licorice Pizza is a 15-year-old boy who falls in love with a 25-year-old girl. And this takes place in the 1970s, and it has a very dazed and confused kind of vibe to it, but with that Paul Thomas Anderson kind of flair. You can kind of divide Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography into halves. You can say that he has movies like There Will Be Blood, and The Master, and Phantom Thread, that are these big epics. Then you have his movies that kind of feel more like hangout movies like Boogie Nights and Inherent Vice. And this one here, Licorice Pizza, which kind of falls more into that latter category. This movie is kind of a fantasy film, if you will. It kind of like, what would it feel like to live in the 1970s? And it really plays on that fantasy. You have the character owning a pinball machine store, and then he's selling water beds. A lot of these big pinnacle things from the 1970s in this film. It kind of reminded me a lot of Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's just this big throwback to that era, and you really feel immersed in that decade and that feel, and the music really complements that as well. There's a controversy kind of surrounding this movie. The fact that there's an age gap between the two leads rather. So you have a 15-year-old boy going out with a 25-year-old girl, and a lot of people are taking offense to it, especially people that are saying, oh, well, if it was the other way around, if it was a 15-year-old girl going out with a 25-year-old boy, that would be kind of odd, but now, why is it acceptable? Listen, to me, I viewed this movie kind of as a fantasy of living in that decade, and it's every boy's fantasy when they're 15 years old to go out with an older girl. So it just kind of added to that feel to me. I didn't really think of it like that. I was a 15-year-old boy at some point, and I had a crush on my teachers a couple of times. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of fantasized about finding myself with a 25-year-old girl at some point. We've all been there, so it's kind of, I think it's a little stupid to criticize the movie for that. So yeah, I just put that aside. I really like this movie. It's not the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and it's not trying to be the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie either. Of course, this is gonna not feel as grandiose as There Will Be Blood or The Master. Especially The Master, to me, is my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film. This isn't that, and it's not trying to be that. This is a more subdued film, more of a hangout film, more of a romanticization of that time period. So it's not trying to have these deep themes of greed and alcoholism and the nature of man. It's not tackling those themes, which it doesn't need to tackle those themes to be a good movie. The thing that this movie really got me on is I never realized how much I missed romance films. And I'm not talking about those shitty Hallmarky romance films, neither am I talking about like shitty rom-coms or romantic films with Zac Efron or whatnot, but just like a movie about how romance is, how unapologetic and relentless that romance is. And I liked seeing these characters fall in love with one another, and just the subtle ways in which Paul Thomas Anderson chooses to film that romance. There's like a shot in here where the two characters are laying on a waterbed, and the boy is looking at the girl as she lies down, and he's just staring at her jeans as it's arching over her belly. You know how the waist of the jeans just arches like that, and you can kind of peek into their underwear. It's very like shot really quietly like that, and I really like that, and it was really an accurate portrayal of what this kind of romance would look like, which I appreciated. It felt real, and especially in this time, like, I feel like there's so much hate going around everywhere. It really felt good to just watch a movie about love, about people loving each other, and they fall in and out of love. They do things to spite each other like you would expect from a romantic film, but I really felt these two characters connect with one another. One thing that really made that romance more believable was the fact that these guys just look like real people. The girl is not played by Vanessa Hudgens, and the guy is not played by Charlie Hunnam. These two unobtainable beauty standards. They kind of just look like people. They make fun of the girl for having a Jewish nose, and they make fun of the guy for being a little pudgy. But it made it feel more real, and it made me more invested in their romance. And another thing that made the romance believable is the fact that this story's structure is not structured like your usual romantic film. It's not structured like, oh, they get together and in the third act they break up and then they get back together. It wasn't like that. The whole movie is about them kind of falling in love. It really ends with them in love, but up until that point they're not quite in love. They like each other 1 second, and then one gets jealous of the other, and then one tries to spite the other by going out with someone else, and goes back and forth like that. It avoids that conventional storytelling for romantic films, which added to the believability of this romance. It's beautifully shot. I don't need to say more. It's a Paul Thomas Anderson film. It's shot on film. It's very beautiful. Some great shots in this. You can look at the trailer to see that. And the music. You can hear it in the trailer. They played David Bowie's Life on Mars. And the music of this film is a lot of that style of music, glam music. And it fit very well. As for negatives, this isn't a perfect film. I feel like the runtime was too long. You could have shaved it down quite a bit, in my opinion. The problem is when you have an auteur filmmaker like a Paul Thomas Anderson or like a Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese, you can't be the one to tell him, look, you gotta shave half an hour off of this thing. Can't really do that. You'd kind of be out of your element if you did that. So, yeah, I feel like you could have shaved it down quite a little bit. Maybe just like a 20-30 minutes. But to me, it doesn't really matter because you're getting a lot of a good thing. It's not like this movie has a part that sags. It doesn't really have that. It just could have been a little tighter, in my opinion. One thing that really kind of irritated me, but it's not really a fault, is the fact that it kind of had an all-star cast, but some of the people would be in it for maybe 5 seconds of screen time. Especially Maya Rudolph, who is married to Paul Thomas Anderson, which I understand. But she shows up in the movie for 5 seconds and then goes away. Sean Penn, same thing. He has like a very small role. Bradley Cooper, they advertised the film saying that Bradley Cooper was going to have a pretty meaty part in this. He's not really in the movie all that much. And that shot in the trailer of him smashing the windows with hammers, that's not in the film at all. So it kind of distracted me. You see these big actors, but they show up for 1 second, and it kind of took me out of the film. But overall, I really like this movie. It really made me fall in love with the idea of romance. And me, I'm an old ball bag, I'm an old chunk of coal. I usually don't fall in love all that easily, but this movie, damn it, it did it for me. I just want to address a second controversy surrounding this movie. Click away if you don't want spoilers. This isn't really a spoiler. It doesn't change the plot knowing this fact at all. But in case you want to go in blindly, this isn't in the trailers, so take it as you will. So the second controversy is that there's this character in this movie. I forget the actor's name. He shows up in every fucking movie. He took Ryan Reynolds' place in Waiting 2. But anyway, there's this character in this, and he's married to a Japanese woman. And whenever he talks to the Japanese woman, he does a very thick impersonating accent of a Japanese accent. and a lot of people are finding that offensive, saying that it's making fun of Japanese culture. They kind of missed the joke. The joke is that this guy has multiple relationships with multiple Japanese women, and he kind of fancies himself as a man of culture, but in reality he just dates Japanese people just to get that kind of clout, and then proceeds to be the most ignorant person when it comes to culture. I think that's what Paul Thomas Anderson was trying to do. I got it, but I mean, yeah, a lot of people are just trying to make headlines out of something that's not that big a deal. I feel like they could have went with the gag a bit more. Again, it kind of falls into that problem where the supporting cast kind of just appears and then disappears. If he had like maybe one more appearance where it cemented that, I feel like it would have played a little better to like an average audience. Anyway, if you haven't seen Licorice Pizza, I suggest you guys go check it out. I still don't know why the movie's called Licorice Pizza. I might have missed it, but whatever. Alright, I'll see you guys around.